Let me start with a simple question that most people never really stop to think about. If you put $100 away today and do absolutely nothing with it, how much will that money really be worth 10, 20, or 30 years from now? Not on paper. In real life. Most people think saving money is enough. You work hard, you save, you're responsible, you don't waste. That sounds right, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Saving alone doesn't protect your future, and inflation is the quiet reason why. Inflation isn't dramatic. It doesn't show up with warnings or headlines every day. It shows up slowly, almost politely. Groceries cost a little more, gas creeps up, insurance renewals sting a bit more each year, and over time, the same money buys less without you ever feeling one big shock. That's why inflation is so dangerous to long-term savings. It doesn't scare people, it slowly erodes them. Think back 20 years. What did $100 feel like back then? A full grocery cart? A nice dinner for two? Maybe a weekend outing with family? Today, that same $100 feels smaller, not useless, but lighter. And that's inflation at work. Now imagine that effect stretched across retirement. This is where many people get caught off guard. They do everything right. They save, they avoid debt, they put money into accounts, but they don't think deeply about what inflation does to that money over decades. Inflation isn't about 1 year being expensive. It's about compounding loss of buying power over time. Here's a simple way to picture it. Imagine your savings is a block of ice. Inflation is the room temperature. The ice doesn't disappear overnight. It slowly melts. And if you don't notice the melting early, you're shocked when there's much less left later. What makes this harder is that inflation doesn't feel the same every year. Some years it's low, some years it jumps. But over long periods, it adds up. Even modest inflation, 2 or 3% a year, can cut your buying power in half over a typical retirement timeline. That's not fear, that's math. This is why wealthy and well-prepared people don't just ask, how much do I have saved? They ask, will my money still work for me in the future? Long-term savings need to do more than sit still. They need to at least keep up with inflation, and ideally, stay a step ahead. Now here's where a lot of people get confused. Protecting against inflation doesn't mean taking wild risks. It doesn't mean chasing hot trends or gambling with your future. It means understanding balance. During your working years, saving is the habit. During your later years, strategy matters more. Cash has a role. It gives safety, flexibility, and peace of mind. You need it for emergencies, short-term needs, and stability. But holding too much cash long-term can quietly cost you. When inflation rises faster than your cash earns, your money is losing value, even though the number in the account looks the same. That's one of the biggest illusions in personal finance. Stability on paper can hide slow loss in real life. This is why people who understand inflation spread their savings across different types of assets, not to get rich fast, but to protect buying power. Some assets grow, some provide income, some hedge against inflation better than others. The goal isn't perfection, the goal is resilience. Inflation also hits retirees differently than workers. When you're working, rising prices can sometimes be offset by raises or new opportunities. In retirement, income is often fixed or limited. That makes inflation more personal. A few percentage points of inflation can mean changing habits. Fewer trips, different choices, more stress than expected. This is why planning for inflation is really planning for lifestyle. Another thing people underestimate is how inflation affects healthcare costs. Medical expenses tend to rise faster than general inflation. Over time, they can take a bigger bite out of savings than people expect. That's why long-term planning isn't just about markets. It's about real-life spending patterns. One smart way people handle inflation is by thinking in layers. Short-term money stays safe and liquid. Medium-term money focuses on steady growth. Long-term money is positioned to outpace inflation over time. This approach reduces stress. You're not forced to react emotionally when markets move. You're not selling at bad times just to cover daily needs. It creates breathing room. Inflation planning is also about mindset. Instead of asking, what's the safest place to put my money? The better question becomes, what's the smartest way to keep my future lifestyle intact? That shift changes everything. Another mistake people make is ignoring inflation during calm periods. When prices aren't rising fast, it feels like something you can think about later. But inflation works whether you pay attention or not. The earlier you account for it, the less dramatic your adjustments need to be later. And here's something important. You don't need to predict inflation perfectly. You just need to respect it. Plans that assume inflation exists tend to hold up better than plans that pretend it doesn't. If this is starting to connect for you, pause for a second and think about your own savings. Not just the number, but the future value. What will that money need to do for you 10 or 20 years from now? That question alone puts you ahead of most people. Inflation doesn't mean your future is fragile. It just means it needs attention. Awareness is power here. People who understand inflation make calmer decisions. They don't panic during spikes. They don't freeze during uncertainty. They already plan for change. That's why financial confidence often has less to do with how much money someone has, and more to do with how well they understand how money behaves over time. If this explanation is helping you see inflation differently, that's a good sign. It means you're thinking beyond headlines and into real-world impact. Before we wrap up, consider this. Inflation isn't your enemy. Ignoring it is. Once you factor it into your thinking, it becomes manageable, predictable, something you plan around, not fear. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What worries you more about inflation, daily expenses, or long-term savings? Share it in the comments. These conversations help everyone see things more clearly. And if this kind of calm, straightforward money talk is useful to you, hitting the like button helps this reach more people who need clarity without hype. If you want more discussions like this around savings, retirement, and long-term planning, subscribing keeps you connected. Thanks for spending this time with me. Take care of your money with intention, protect your future from quiet risks, and I'll see you in the next video.